Well, hi everyone, and welcome to 2023. Happy New Year, Jonas.
Yeah, Happy New Year, Alan.
And we're this is our first video, obviously, of 2023. And I hope your Christmas was good.
It was awesome. We had a very relaxed time. And you?
Yeah, that's the way to do it. Yeah, it was good. We had gone to Mexico and Cuba before. I managed to bring home some intestinal accompaniment, so it was. I laid low for a while, but we still had a good Christmas anyway, and
Okay,
rested and ready now, and
that's it.
ready to go. So once again, we have picked a total of 10 records to talk about, to four of which we're each going to do, and the other person knows about, and then we also have a couple of surprise records at the end. Um, and we'll save the theme of those records until we get to the end, and that'll be a little surprise for everyone who's viewing. So, who did we decide is going to start? I forget.
You're gonna start.
Oh, it's me. That's right. Okay, super. And so, very timely this week, because of course we this week had the passing of the great Jeff Beck, one of the most remarkable guitarists that ever was, and somebody who managed to move from genre to genre to genre without ever being pigeonholed in that genre. He always was his own self when he was with the Yardbirds, when he did his own solo stuff, and really a unique career as an instrumentalist. So certainly as a guitarist, an electric guitarist, I would say. So a great loss this week. But we didn't even know that he was close to passing when we decided to talk about Jeff Beck's record Wired, which is falls to me to talk about, and I'll just pull up my copy, which I don't think is very distinguished. But anyway, here it is. I think it's a Canadian repress, I think, which marks it down as not particularly novel, but anyway, there we are.
A
So
little bit other title on yours than on
oh
mine.
yeah,
This is
you've got the blurriness. I don't know which is
yeah,
the original version. Yours looks cooler.
this is 1976 in Holland. So
Oh,
I think is it a first US or European press maybe?
quite possibly. I mean, the Dutch get up to all kinds of things, right?
Had it for so long. Like you could get these for a dollar in back in the day when I bought this. No one got Jeff Beck records.
Well, I think you still can. I think it's.
Okay.
I think it's. Um, because it's. He's no longer really rocking out, as it were, right?
Yeah.
He's doing a different thing here. He sort of lost his some of his rock audience, right? And there were, however, a lot of these sold at the time. They pressed a lot of them, so I think I would bet I could still pick up a copy in good shape for less than $10 in
Yeah.
kind of value bins here and there. But that doesn't mean it's not a great record, because this
Oh
is
no, no.
an excellent record. It's this great group he had when Jan Hammer had joined, and Hammer is great on here. Beck, of course, is great on here,
Yeah.
but there's a contribution from other players as well. In particular, Wilbur Bascom, I
Yep.
think, is amazing on some of these tracks. And then he's got three drummers on here, including Narada Michael Walden, who writes
Yep.
about half the album, I think. So it's really fascinating. It's not just a Jeff Beck show. In fact, in some respects, he's I mean, he's still central, but I mean, there's no way does he dominate this record. I mean, this is very much a collective
Yeah.
piece. Jan Hammer, the first track, Lead Boots, like I love his work in the synth, although it's tricky because I think Beck at times too is also playing quite heavily processed guitar at different points in the record. So it's been a long time since I listened to it. So I had to go back and okay, hang on, is that a synth, or is that? And in fact, on a couple of tracks, I think it's actually Beck just with heavy processing on his guitar. Um, Bass work, as I think I mentioned, is fantastic. That song, Sad One as a whole, I think is just great. Come Dancing with the two drummers, it's just funky as anything. And again, the interplay between Beck and Hammer is I think just fantastic. But my favorite part of side one is actually the third track, Goodbye Pork Pie Hat, which is the Mingus tribute. And it's funny. Again, it's funny when you go back to a record that you think you know and you've listened to before. But when I listened to this before back in the day, I was not necessarily as committed a jazz fan or as experienced a jazz fan as I am now. So I wasn't that familiar with the original at the time. But now I have to say, I think this is my favorite version of that tune, actually. Much as the Mingus version is, you know, in its various iterations is great. I love this version. I think it's
Yeah.
fantastic. And given that it's, you know, a kind of a in itself is a reverential tribute tune to Lester Young, there's a kind of a mournfulness and a reverence in Beck's version, which is almost kind of more appropriate to me anyway than the Mingus version. So I think that's great. And then you know, this bass work and Bailey's drumming on Head for Backstage Pass. Side two, I'm not so keen on. I'm always happy to play side one. Side two, I'm interested to hear what you think about this, because as you know, I'm not that big of a fusion guy. I like the funkier stuff that occurs on side one. Side two is more what I would call, you know, electric fusiony. And to me, I find there's too much sort of virtuoso stuff at the expense of other things that I like. But I do love the final track, Love Is Green, which I think is totally beautiful. So for me, it's like if I were to score, I'd call it a 4 out of 5 record. I love the first side. My own taste. I'm not saying side two is not good, but it's not really to my taste. But anyway, what do you think? I'm fascinated to see, because this to me is like halfway between fusion and jazz funk, right? And
yeah, sure. Yeah. I think that you said everything I want to say, and I agree. I like the more fusionist stuff than the funkier stuff. So I don't mind the second side here at all. I think I grade this a 4 out of 5 also, because not a 5, because I think it's a little bit ahead of its time, and I say that not in 100% positive way. Because I think that the sort of I love Jan Hammer, and I think that his best work was a little bit before this, and then he got into sort of the early the early 80s sound, late 70s, early 80s sound. I can't really put my finger on it, but it's a sound that is compressed and to me boring, like. Too much, and I think that Jan Hammer, he went into that trap, but before that he made some killer stuff. There's a very underrated jazz record called, I think it's called like Children, that he did with Jerry, violin player Jerry. Never mind. It's a really good record. But no, I don't have anything more to say about this one.
I was just going to react to what you were saying about Hammer. I think what his early, as you say, when he was innovating that stuff, it was exciting. I think then what happens is movie producers, TV producers kind of lock onto that sound. It's commercial, or they can see the commercial applications of it, and it sort of you start to find it everywhere. And
even Jeff Beck went into that trap, didn't he? Because in the 80s, he also did the sort of tried to go a little bit more commercial and radio friendly. And I mean, this is my Jeff Beck. This or before this is definitely my Beck Ola. Fantastic. Truth. Amazing.
Well, great. Okay, so thank you for allowing me to lead off with that one, and rest in peace, Jeff Beck, a tremendous artist, the like of whom we won't see again. Okay, over to you, Jonas.
Yeah, next we are going to talk about, and I'm really glad because I've seen this on our list. Like we compare our Discogs lists, and we see which of the records that we do have, both of us, in our collection. And this is one of those records that I've seen for so long, and I've never dared to talk about it because it's such a heavy record. Like I really wanted to listen to it and absorb it and be able to talk about it. And I don't know if I can do that today either, but here we are. So this is John Coltrane, or especially Alice Coltrane, maybe, with Cosmic Music. 1967, I think it was recorded and released 1968, but I might be mistaken. And this is, we both have the sort of the reissue version of this one. I would love to have the first press. Man, that would be awesome, because I think that it was the only record that was released on the first real Coltrane recordings, or Coltrane records. I don't know what it called it. And I was curious to know if you know what happened with the label, because they had to, I mean, Alice Coltrane and John Coltrane, they started this label called Coltrane Music or Coltrane Records, but then they seemed to merge into Impulse again after his death, something like that.
Well, I do know the story. Because it was part of my conversation with Ed Michel. What happens is John dies and Alice is distraught, and she's got all these tapes, and she pulls together this, some of this stuff that Coltrane had recorded out in San Francisco with the big group with Sanders and herself and so on. So they had a couple tracks, and then she got a couple tracks in the Dix Hill studio in their home, and then she gets this pressed. What she didn't realize, of course, is that Impulse had the rights to anything Coltrane had recorded while he was still alive. Well, obviously he's dead, but they had the rights to the San Francisco tracks. So Bob Thiel calls her up. They Impulse decides they're not going to go down heavy on his widow, right? So calls her up and says, look, actually we have the rights to this, but instead of we're not going to sue you or anything like that. I mean, she had no distribution, so there's very few of those sold. So he said, look, let us do a better job of the pressing, the packaging, the distribution, all this sort of stuff. And while we're at it, let's sign you to a record deal. And so she said, great, because also she's anxious because her husband's died. Where's her money going to come from? So now she's got a deal. So it's kind of win-win. And then the version they put out sells because they've got the distribution and all the rest of it. So that was kind of how it was dealt with them. But those original ones they're scarce and they're expensive. You can find one.
They only released the Cosmic Music as outside of Impulse. So did they release anything more outside of Impulse?
So you can see, right? There's the little logo, right? Coltrane Records. It's got the Impulse logo on it there, but it doesn't obviously on her version. But no, the only record as such, and I don't even know if she had incorporated a company, or what have you, because they would have had to do a title search and so on, would have bumped into issues. As far as I know, it's only that first slightly illegal pressing that she did that is the only one that was not produced on Impulse, and obviously this one later was done on Impulse. So
I have Infinity, which has I think 2 tracks that were from the same sessions as this, and that's also a Coltrane Records product, but also with Impulse. So that's why I thought of maybe.
I think they said you can put the that logo on the cover, right? But I don't know. Don't think it's particularly meaningful. I mean, it was to her obviously, but I don't think it wasn't economically meaningful.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and music-wise, I mean, a lot of you know about this, I bet. But Coltrane is only playing on two tracks on this, if I did my research correct. But if you listen to it, it's pretty obvious. And the first track is beautiful. It's fantastic, and you can really hear Coltrane playing on it. Can't remember the song title of it.
Manifestation. Oh no, sorry. Dedicated to the Oceanic Beloved.
Okay. I think that's what he's playing on. No, Manifestation.
Oh no, Manifestation. That's right. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
I never know the song titles for this one. I just listened to it. I never know the song titles.
No. So yeah, I think it's a brilliant song, really, really good. But other than that, in my book, this is more of a Alice Coltrane record than a John Coltrane record. Sound-wise, maybe. Yeah. So what's your take on this?
I agree. I think it's a great record, but I frankly love the Alice stuff, right? The stuff after he's gone, because at this stage in his career, I find him interesting at this stage of his career, but and I won't say he's lost me, because I'm actually capable, unlike some, of sitting down and listening to records like Ohm, right? And sitting all the way through and digging it and getting something out of it. But I feel at this point he was kind of heading down a cul-de-sac. I don't know, where would he have, if he'd lived another 5, 10, whatever, 40 years, what would he have been playing in 1970? It would not have been what he was playing in 1967 or 66. Like that to me, like, where do you go with that, right? It was getting, non-melodic, very, very atonal. It was, it was driving some great musicians away, right?
Yes.
And
Definitely.
So that to me is kind of limited. Whereas for her at this stage, it's actually really exciting, but listening to her, because she's got this vision for her music, which is going to be realized in spectacular ways in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years. Like you could hear where you're going to get like Journey to Satchidananda and Pata the El Daoud, like the seeds of those great records are in her pieces here. So yeah, for me, I listened to this. The other day I was thinking, where did I file this? Did I file it under Alice? Because maybe it kind of, she deserves, because it's kind of really, for her, I think it's the bigger contribution of the two to the record, and it's and it's great. So yeah, I listened to it as an Alice record.
Yeah, and I think it's. I mean, if I had to put a number on it, maybe a 3 out of 5. I think that it's the sort of the mysticism or the sort of the cult surrounding the record is a little bit more interesting than the actual record itself, in my opinion.
I'd probably go higher, but that's only because I'm a Coltrane freak. So
yeah, sure.
so that's the sort of the fan bonus, right? So
okay.
Okay, so let's move on, and our next record is, of course, which I've tucked down at the bottom, is a tremendous record from the late 70s by Keith Jarrett and his American quartet, the Survivors Suite. And Keith Jarrett is, well, he's such an interesting guy because he forces you to really, think about what your definition of jazz is.
Yes.
Because very clearly, if Keith Jarrett is jazz, and I think he is, then therefore jazz does not have to swing all the time, because sometimes this swings, but normally for large passages it doesn't. A lot of his solo records don't really swing. They're clearly jazz for me because they are fundamentally improvisational pieces, and that's and that's for me the kind of the line over which exists jazz and before which does not. But I think this is just a great record. One of the interesting things about it apparently is that he was writing it with a specific concert hall in mind, and he knew,
I read it.
You saw that, and then he knew that somehow the resonance in that concert hall wasn't going to favor fast tempo, so therefore he writes this with a much with slower tempos in mind, which doesn't mean it doesn't get busy at certain points.
No.
It does, but my favorite part of this is actually is whatever it's called, an intro or beginning, whatever he calls the first side. The beginning. That's it's of the two sides, it's the one I prefer. This is basically one large extended piece with various different movements, and anything like that, which is nearly an hour in length or whatever it is. I mean, it's quite long, isn't it? It's nearly 50 minutes long.
Yeah.
Overall, the two pieces, and the side one especially long. So I mean, there are records that are shorter than side one, right, itself.
Yeah.
But it's so for me, I like the more contemplative, almost ceremonial sounds on the first side. I think it's him playing a recorder in the first passage at the beginning, which I think is very beautiful. It's also got that fantastic solo by Charlie Haydn, and I am a massive Charlie Haydn fan, and I think that solo is one of his the best ever pieces. I think the interplay between Jarrett and Dewey Redman on side one is when after Jarrett comes in on the piano, like midway through the track, is just great. Side two gets a little bit, I won't say it loses me, but it gets a little formless at times for me, and I'm not as wild about it, but I could listen to side one again and again and again, and it does have this. It's a very grand feeling, when you consider there's only 4 guys playing, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing the sort of the scale of the sort of feelings they managed to sort of conjure up. So anyway, that's what I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you all the way. I think that side one is better than side two. Side one is a freaking masterpiece and such an underrated ECM record. Even it's an ECM record because you can really hear that it's an ECM record. But I think that the sort of, I don't know, the playing or the structure of the song or what it is that makes it such a non-ECM record. I'm also fascinated of how little space Jarrett takes on it, because in my opinion, he is almost the one that sounds the least of all of them. Like Paul Motion and Charlie Hayden, fantastic. Yuri Redman on reeds, and then sometimes you hear a piano. Like
I guess it's his composition, but he's playing with with three like awesome musicians, so
exactly.
He doesn't have to worry about about what do you think? So what do you think then? I'm interested in that comment you made. What do you think makes an ECM record an ECM record?
I thought about this, and I think that it's the sort of the airiness around it. And ECM for me is definitely a hit or miss. Like, I shouldn't say most ECM records that I've heard are, every ECM record is good, but there are ECM records that are freaking fantastic, like really, really fantastic. It's not like Blue Note or Impulse where everything is fantastic. Like they could fart in a microphone at Impulse and it would be a masterpiece. Like, and ECM is like everything is good, but it's I think that it's the airiness around it. It's a very Scandinavian sort of sound, in my opinion.
I totally agree. I agree with all those comments. It's there's a minimalism, right? Mm-hmm. And it's funny. I'm not going to pronounce his name correctly. Jakob Bro, or the guitarist. So we saw him at the Village Vanguard, and I didn't really know his music before, but we wanted to go to the Village Vanguard, and he was playing that night. And, we didn't have much option really in New York for a few days. It was a great show, I had no idea what to expect. It's quite funny because he came out, and he's in he looks like he'd been sleeping on the couch. He's in like a pair of cords. He's got a button-down shirt, but it's kind of untucked, and I think he was in his socks. And his corduroy pants were kind of rumpled anyway. So he looks like he just been, got up, or, pizza arrived at the door, this kind of thing. And he's, but his playing was beautiful, but it was very spare and very minimal. And that's, now I understand, because I've now listened to his stuff and bought his records and so on. Like now I understand that's his thing. But I remember thinking at the time, if this guy has a recording contract, which I'm sure he does, he must be on ECM. And sure enough, absolutely.
They scooped him up right away.
But sometimes it can be a little bit sterile, a little bit cold, and I think that's down to Manfred Eichner, I think, because he's the guy on the dials, or in the producers in the control room for almost all these records, right? But but when it's good, it's good,
Really, really good. Yeah. I know there's a book about DCM that I have on my sort of want list that I want to read up on. And I've actually bought quite a few ECM CDs lately, because they continued producing fantastic music way after vinyl was gone. And you can find CDs for next to nothing. And the musicianships, there's nothing wrong with the musicianship on the records or from then or now. So I've been.
There's certain eras of music. There's certain eras of music it's just not worth bothering chasing down the vinyl, right? Because they weren't making much of it, and anything you get now is some sort of an afterthought. It's like there's an Austrian producer duo, Kruder and Dorfmeister. I don't know if you know those guys. Anyway, but they produce some incredible music. You can't find that stuff on. You can on vinyl, I think, but it's weird to say, but it's better to find it on CD, right? It's in its natural form. Okay,
highly recommended. Highly recommended.
Me too. That's
like
very
the end
good.
of that.
Good record. Thumbs up from us. Okay.
This is definitely. Let's see here. Yeah, this is definitely the record of the sort of evening for me. I sort of rediscovered this record. Oh shit, I love this record so much. And I listened to it today. I bought this for €1 back in the day,
Yep.
and I haven't listened to it since. And I noticed I didn't clean it, and this deserves a cleaning, because you have to listen to it, you know, spotless. It's such a fantastic soundstage. Also, this is Dolly Parton's Jolene.
Yeah.
I'm like,
it's fantastic, isn't it? The sound of the record is amazing.
I mean, the title track, Jolene, the sort of the acoustic guitar, the finger picking in the right channel, and you have some swooping sort of drums on the left, I think, and her voice just spot on, and the soundstage is enormous. Like, I've never heard a Nashville sort of record being that huge, but there's not much instruments. Fantastically recorded, such a great record. Or should I say a great record? I think there's a couple of duds, like really, really bad tracks that is super cringe worthy. And I think that's not, I think that they are good tracks, but I mean, she's really sad on this, isn't she? I mean, she has some serious boy problems on this one.
Are you thinking of Randy as one of the cheesy tracks?
Maybe. Let's see here. River of Happiness was maybe one of those also that I was like, because every single song is about heartbreak or sort of the man leaving the woman stuff. I mean, she's not a strong woman on this one, is she?
Yeah, I've heard that's a common critique of this record, actually. That
Okay.
it really, you know, she doesn't have much backbone in the lyrics here, which
No.
and that's I think it's fair. But the highlights here, it's not just the title track, is it? I mean, there's other.
Oh no. I mean, I will always love you. Also fantastic. Early Morning Breeze, maybe.
That's that one. Now that's that's a remake, eh? Like she had already put that song out just like 2 albums before or something like that, or 3 albums before, and this is a re-recording. I don't know why she re-recorded it, because the first version was pretty good. I mean, this is good too, and there's not really much to choose, actually, if you play them sequentially between them. But it is a great record, great song.
I know nothing about Dolly Parton, like nothing. And I was, when I did the research now, going into this recording, it's her 13th solo record. Yeah. Like 13. I thought that this was the first one, especially when you see the cover artwork. This is an ugly cover, isn't it?
It's not the most attractive cover, I have to say. There are 3 Dolly Parton records which I would recommend anybody own. If you and those are this one, Coat of Many Colors, which is a beautiful record, beautiful title track too. That title track brings me to tears every single time. Not a lot of songs do. And then My Tennessee Mountain Home. Those are all from her kind of early classic period. I think she's out on her own without Porter Wagoner for all of those. I mean, she does great stuff before and later. But I lose interest when she gets into the pop stuff, but unfortunately in this classic period, the corny stuff kind of comes with the package. But if anybody can carry off a totally corny song, it's, and make it work, it's Dolly Parton, right? You imagine other people trying to sing these songs and like how bad they would be, right?
Yeah,
but in hands, they're just gold. So
in one way, when I sat and listened to it in my car when I went back and forth to work, and when I listened to it, it was almost like it struck me like it's a concept album of sorts. Like she almost like what it's called with Paul Simon, 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. It's like should be. The title of this should be 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover or something like that instead. Then it would be wrong.
Yeah, it does. There's a certain pathos to it. I agree. all right, but it's a good record.
I mean, the sound quality wise, and I mean, at least 2/3 of the record is fantastic.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if you're an audiophile, this is a great test record. If you want to show off your stereo, you're good.
No, I mean, I never thought that Dolly Parton would be a sort of audiophile material thing, but yeah, definitely. This is an 80s press and it's on Dynaflex, but it sounds good.
Yeah, Bob Ferguson, of whom I had not heard, is the producer. But I mean, there were, and also just if you want to know more about like the production and the studio sounds in Nashville, I highly recommend the there's a podcast. I think I might have mentioned it before here, called Cocaine and Rhinestones.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
you mentioned.
Yeah, and that guy does a few different particularly discussions of George Jones, a few different discussions of like kind of the studio setups in Nashville in the 60s. And it's just if you're like a recording studio nerd, those are absolutely fascinating podcasts to listen to. I totally recommend. So speaking of the South,
Yes.
the next record we're going to talk about is by a classic Southern band, but a band which is, however, sometimes kind of difficult to pigeonhole, and all the better for that. And that, of course, is the Allman Brothers. And this is their record, which I think is their second, but I'm not 100% certain. It's early on in their sequence. Obviously, Dwayne's still alive, so it's fairly early. Idlewild South. I have one that's got it's got some sort of nasty sort of brown damage on the opening here. But otherwise has a nice kind of, does your copy have this sort of rough exterior to the record?
Yeah, a little bit, but it's not super rough. This is I don't think it's a first press. Capricorn Records is your Abco, or what?
Yeah, that's the one. Here's the
Abco. Yeah, yours is definitely the older press. I bought this when I was in New York, and I know that because I kept the price sticker inside of the cover.
All right.
I always did that, but I don't do that anymore. That's a shame, really.
Well,
it's $6 for it.
That's not bad. Yeah, I think this is the first press, but it's seen better days, let's just say. But the record itself is in good shape. So this is this is the classic Allman's lineup, you know, with Dickie Betts and Dwayne playing guitar, Greg singing, Barry Oakley on bass before, you know, he kind of cracked up a bit, and then Butch Trucks, of course, and then of course Jai Johanni Johansson. I just see what you make of that, what you make of his name, because that's there he is there.
Jai Johnny Johansson. Jai Johnny Johansson.
Jai Johnny Johansson. Famous Swedish musician. So anyway, this is probably my favorite Allman's record, actually.
Oh shit.
I know people, I mean, people love the live record and so on. And this is like of the Dwayne era Allman's. Yeah. And because you can make a great case for other records like Eat a Peach or whatever, but this to me is the best one that has Dwayne on it. I love like those twin guitar lines, even from like the very start, when Revival, which is like one of the most happy sort of upbeat tracks they ever did too. It just gets you in a great mood listening to this record. And when I say they're hard to pigeonhole, like the next song, like Don't Keep Me Wondering, which is like, is it blues? Is it country? Is it rock? Like it occupies the space somewhere in between, and with the slide guitar. Midnight Rider, I love that riff. Love that, you know, the harmony vocal. It's a total classic. Elizabeth Reed is just, you know, one of the epic guitar workout, right? And fascinating mastery, or not so much mastery, but sort of influence different styles. Like even at the very end, like Leave My Blues, listen to it again, think of James Brown, right? I mean, it's definitely got a James Brown funky influence to it, right? And so they're country rock, but I mean, they're not country rock in the way that that Lynyrd Skynyrd were country rock, right? They're so multifaceted in the kinds of music they could play. And their influences, which were obviously many. It's a fascinating record by a fascinating band. I love it. This will be the one. If I could only keep one Allman's record, I think this would be the one that I would hold on to. So yeah, what do you think of it?
Yeah, I think it's a great record. I don't think that it's the one that I've played the most. And if I could keep one Allman's record, it would be the live record, because I love that, the sound of it, the energy, and the song quality. great picks, you know, especially Whipping Post. I mean, I'm a huge fan. Everyone's a huge fan of Whipping Post. And it's interesting that you say, because you're totally right about it's not being country, it's not being, you know, blues, standard blues at least. Maybe a little bit Americana, but not. Yeah, they are hard to pin down. And I don't know if it was Dwayne that drove the bus, so to speak, when it came to the sound that they had at this point, because I lose a little bit of interest when it comes to Eat a Peach and then Brothers and Sisters or whatever it's called. And I have nothing more with Allman Brothers, and I don't have anything of Greg's. I have his first solo record. I think that's good. But I'd rather play my compilation of Dwayne Allman's Chronicles or something like that, when he played with, was it B.B. King or Aretha Franklin played with her too. So
well, I mean, they were you know, Dwayne had all kinds, like you mentioned, Dwayne played with Aretha, and they had all kinds of blues and soul influences. A lot of the songs here in theory are blues songs because they're using blues scales and blues forms, right? 12-bar forms and so on. But they don't, like Hoochie Coochie Man, right? Okay, there's a classic blues tune written by a classic blues man, Willie Dixon, but the arrangement here is fundamentally different, right? It is a totally different way of approaching that song. You know, if I forget if the Stones did it, but if they didn't do it, they probably ought to. I mean, it's the kind of thing the Stones would have done. The Stones would have done it if, and again, I'm embarrassed that I can't remember if they did, but if they did do it, they would have done it in the kind of a tribute band kind of way. This is not a tribute band take on that song. We're going to Allman's this up and make it our own song. And you have to remind yourself that what the origin, this is a Chicago blues song, but they've done something. So that, they're
Parton has done Hoochie Coochie Man a bunch of times, and that's a tribute song. Like that's a cover of that. That's just like you say, this is a Allman product that they do with that song. And I've never heard anyone do it like that, I think. But I don't like Clapton, so but and Layla, that's also on that record. You can also like, I think that Layla is one of the best records that Clapton ever were on, and I think that's has a lot to do with Wayne, and the Traffic guy,
Winwood.
Winwood, wasn't he in?
He's in there somewhere, but I can't give you chapter and verse on Layla, but I do know Wayne's on there. I couldn't resist Googling, and the Stones did play Hoochie Coochie Man, but only live on the BBC. They never cut as a studio track. So I knew there was something in my head there. Anyway,
nice.
Resolved. But yeah, I mean, they're a remarkable band, the Allmans. Or that particular iteration of them was hard to pin down, and all the more fascinating for that. So anyway, great record.
Great record. Okay, my turn.
Yep.
Let's see. I have some notes here for this one. It's 1977.
Yep.
I think that this is first UK press, maybe. No. Fuck it. This is Lust for Life with Iggy Pop. Such a great record. Like, shit, the energy on this is just to die for. And that opening track, Lust for Life, like with the drums, and it's not like the super hard hitting drum. Well, it is, but it's more of a driving drum, produced in Hansa studio, and you can really hear that, I think, on the entire production. Like produced by David Bowie, Iggy Pop's second solo album after The Idiot. I don't know what more to say about this. It's a fantastic record. I hold this higher than Idiot, actually.
Yeah, I think I do too. Those drums, you know what those drums remind me of? Whoever plays the opening drums to Sing Sing Sing. Think of the drumming intro to that to that track. Anyway, it's the same kind of energy. Yeah, it's an incredible record, I think. But you know what's fascinating? Well, many things are fascinating because this is sort of peak Bowie Iggy Pop collaboration. Yeah. Bowie writes like all but 2 of the songs on here. Iggy always brings the energy, but the grandeur to some of these songs is definitely Bowie's. And I don't know if he gets credited, but I'm sure he's there singing and doing stuff in the background. Probably. Oh no, yeah, well, he plays piano. He does get a credit for piano, and I guess he's also the recording engineer too, strangely. But you know, the funny thing is, the very best song in this track on this record is one of the only ones not written by Bowie. It's
Yeah,
the
Passenger.
passenger, which that to me is like any record that has a passenger on it is automatically a great record because that's one of my, you know, BBC has that Desert Island disc, you
Yes,
know,
yes.
10 songs. That is one of mine. And I came to it later in life, actually, weirdly. I never heard the song at the time. And although I was a bit young, because I was only 12 when it came out, I guess. But I never, you know, somehow it just sort of missed me. And I only really started to listen to it in the later 90s. And it just became like an earworm. It's a fascinatingly hard song to sing because to sing the lyrics accurately because he does all kinds of variations, and sometimes the choruses or the verses are longer, sometimes they're shorter by a couple of lines.
Okay.
Various different things. If you even now, I probably heard that song 200-300 times, and I still have a hard time singing along because I'll miss certain lines or cues, and I forget. You know, it's anyway. That's just my own failings. Maybe it's not actually a hard song.
Maybe.
I love that song, and
Yeah.
I love the title track. And the rest of it, I think, it has some great parts to it, and sometimes I think we talked about Bowie's Berlin sort of phase, and I'm not super keen on all of it, and I think some of that sort of late 70s Bowie malaise kind of seeps in at times, but whatever.
Definitely. This is when I listen to it, I my reaction now when I listen to it today was that this is a Bowie product. Like in not only the songs and not only the sound, but it's in the arrangements. It's such a Bowie product, in my opinion. Bowie is definitely all over that, and I think it's great. I love his Berlin period.
Yeah, it's like the Bowie band featuring Iggy Pop, you know.
Yeah, a little bit like that. Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of what this is. Well, I mean, he wrote whatever 80% of the record, and he produced it pretty much. Or I mean, I mean, the producer is nominally the Bewlay brothers. I don't know. Do you know who they are? The Bewlay brothers? Never heard.
No, I should know, but I don't. I know that when I read up on it, one of the producers. Let's see here.
Is it a fake name for Iggy and Bowie? Do they
Maybe.
call it? Because is it like Nanker Felge or whatever, like the Stones used to do, kind of thing? Like, you know,
Twins.
Maybe it is. Got to read up on that. Anyway, great record, eh?
Great record. Great record.
Okay, where are we at now? Aha, a little known jazz performer, somewhat obscure, but we're going to try and give him some profile here, by the name of Miles Davis. And
feels like we've gone through his entire catalog soon.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't know. There's a lot to go through, but
that's a lot to go through.
If you look on Wikipedia for Miles's discography, it has a disclaimer at the top saying basically this is a living document that could never possibly be accurate. You know, so basically, I guess I presume that there were like zillions of fights in like the, you know, in the chat area between Miles fans, and like, you know, like, well, that was the RCA pressing, et cetera, you know, kind of thing. Anyway. So this is Someday My Prince Will Come. I'm very proud of my copy here because it is a first mono pressing with the Columbia 6i label, and which I got in Mexico City just recently.
Nice.
I walked into a store and there it was, and it was very reasonable. I mean, it's got like a split at the top, which I have to fix, and so on, and one at the bottom. But the record itself is in great shape. This is like, I mean, Miles is seemingly always in transition, but this is, you know, which transition? This was the one where Coltrane is basically got a foot and a half out the door.
Yep.
After his second stint. So Mobley has come in, and that's one of the reasons I think why this record doesn't get very good press, because I was like, oh well, you know, I mean, it's a step down. Most of the sax playing is Mobley. So, and true, right? I mean, where Coltrane is on the, where he appears on the 2 tracks he does appear, he's fantastic. I think he's in the form of his life. And poor Mobley, who shares a track with him at one point, it gets a little bit overshadowed. But Mobley is no slouch. He's more traditionally hard boppy, sort of blues oriented player, and that's what he did, and which is why Alfred Lyon recorded him whatever, like 100 times or however many times he's on a blue note. He's on a lot of blue notes. But I think this record is actually really, really great. And for me, it's hard for me to think of another record which has more of that sound of Miles, which I love the most, that muted trumpet kind of smoky sounding. Like, this is a record, listening to this is the kind of record that makes cigarette smoking cool, right? Smoking cigarettes, in a Parisian cafe when it's raining, this kind of like this is the music that you want, is because there's at least about half the record is ballads, right? With that trumpet sound, which is so great. He's got that great rhythm section, right? With Cobb and Win Kelly, who sounds a little bit. Kelly sounds a bit like Bill Evans at points here, and he reminds you a little bit as what McCoy Tyner would sound like. With these, just has these kind of, I don't know if they're modal, but these little kind of almost 2-fingered chords that he sort of layers in, particularly at the beginning of the first track of the title track. Just an excellent record, and in particular the ballads, but otherwise the fast numbers swing. Coltrane is incredible on in his 2 cameos here, and Mobley is a great player, just a very different player. And I think it's unfortunate for him, one track where he's on. I guess it's the title track, where I think contrast doesn't do him too many favors. No. But on his own, I think it's great. This is one of my favorite Miles records. That I'd put this in my top, certainly my top 10, maybe even my top 5 Miles records. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic record. I think that it's the perfect record. I think the sound is just between Sketches of Spain and Kind of Blue. And I love the beginning that almost whips up this sort of expectations of where the song is going, and then he comes in swooping in with his very sort of great trumpet playing. I love it. I think it's if you're tired of Kind of Blue, you could put this on and it would be a great sort of transition. Maybe on my top 10, not my top 5, but it's maybe
fair. Yeah, well, there's a lot to choose from. Yeah, it's funny because it's a different kind of a mood to Kind of Blue too, right? It harkens back a bit more to his Prestige sides, and I can think of what's that beautiful track? I think on it never entered my mind, but I forget which one of those Prestige ones it's on. It might be Workin', I think. Anyway, that to me is like peak Miles, peak sort of early mid-career Miles is that track, and that the feelings I get from listening to It Never Entered My Mind, the feelings he evokes there, I get that a lot, that buzz a lot from this record as well.
I think it's fascinating also because the older I get, the more I tend to go towards the sound of Miles. When I started listening to Miles, I was in the fusion. So Bitches Brew and In a Silent Way, Nefertiti, those were for me the top 5s. And my least favorite Miles record was Sketches of Spain, the sort of orchestral Miles, and now it's just the other way around. I can't get enough of Sketches of Spain. I think that's a fantastic record.
That Concerto de Aranjuez, that track is that's another one. I just go back to my head all the time. Yeah. Where I don't listen to Miles after 1970. Really, I try now and then, but I recognize a lot of people love that era. I think I'm missing the gene that makes that music.
The fusion gene.
The fusion gene. Exactly. So, okay, next.
Okay. Yeah, this is going to be a controversial record to talk about. So strap on to something, but I didn't manage to play the entire thing. Like, I don't get it. I really don't get it with this band. And I've said it before on my channel. Like, I really try. Like, I really try to get what it's all about, and I can't understand it. Like, I don't have one single Who record that I think is good. And I listen to maybe...
That's a statement. That's a
yeah,
statement.
that's a statement. Yeah, I'm gonna lose so many subscribers now. I don't care. I'd listen to like 5 or 6 songs on this one, and I had to turn it off. Like, and I think that the thing is, I can't really wrap my head around Roger Daltrey's voice. I think it's a little bit like Roxy Music. I love Roxy Music, the music, but I can't stand Brian Ferry.
Right.
Like, when I just hear his voice, I get pissed off. Like, and all the solo stuff that the other musicians have done with Eno, obviously, but Manzanera also, fantastic. But I can't stand Brian Ferry. And I think that there's a little bit of that in this. This is so pompous. I don't get it. Like, so I guess you tell me.
First of all, I want to say I get it about the Who to the degree that I don't think there are certain things about Daltrey which annoy me too. Sometimes I think, God, he's just the wrong voice for this song. So often it's a relief when Pete sings, because you know, when Pete sings, it's a whole different feel, and Daltrey is always like a bull in a china shop. It feels to me, but let me just, before I talk about Tommy, can I? So would you say that? So you don't think Who's Next is a good record?
Now, I think that there's songs on Who's Next that is good. It's been a while since I played it, and if I had to, gun to my head, had to pick one, the Who record, it would be that, I guess.
And the other Who record, actually, which I think is incredibly good, is actually that weird compilation semi-live album called The Kids Are All Right, which sort of soundtrack to the film. That has some incredible versions of songs, in fact, and including what I think are much better versions of the songs on Tommy. The hit songs on Tommy are on that, because they did some spectacular live versions of some of the tracks here. Like at Woodstock, they did great versions of the tracks here. But
I listened to that. I listened to the Woodstock concert, and I was like, and everyone is talking about Live at Leeds, and I have that also, early press with all the hoopla in it, and I mean, and it's just like this muddy sound. I don't get just like, I don't get the.
I think people like the energy, but as for Tommy, so I like a lot of parts of it. This is you know, it's such a cliche, but had it been a single album, right? Had it been a single LP, might have been a lot better. Okay. There's a lot of, you know, I mean, I don't like opera itself, let alone rock opera. I don't like opera. The reason I don't like opera is not because I'm a Philistine. Well, maybe I am a Philistine, but I love the arias, but it's all the shit in the middle that I can't stand, right? All the recitative, you know, kind of the B-list stuff they pad out, you know, it's like, well, I'd love to go see a play. I'd love to see a concert. I don't want to see a play and a concert mashed up together, which again makes me probably a Philistine. So same here. There are, I think, some of the Who's greatest moments around here, like, Pinball Wizard. Right? I mean,
yeah, sure.
Very good candidate to be their greatest song ever. See Me, Feel Me, I think is great. Live version of that is better. I love the riff in I'm Free, but you know, 2 albums worth, it's a long slog. It's a harder slog. I mean, I know I've been highly critical about the White Album, which has, you know, a lot of self-indulgent shit on it as well, frankly. This it's not so much well, I guess it is self-indulgent. It's more, as you say, pompous. It's overreach. He does the musical idea is to flesh out 2 solid hours of pop or whatever, or an hour and a half of pop music aren't there.
Yeah.
You know, and so I mean, really, and now people are going to be. I'm sure there's some, like, you know, neck-bearded, you know, Tommy fans out there who are sort of gripping the sofa and stuff. But you know, and critical appraisals of this, people used to say it was great, you know, like the best thing since sliced bread. Now I think, you know, most people are like, yeah, you know, it's got some good songs and a bunch of stuff that there's a lot of revelatory stuff about, you know, Pete Townshend's upbringing or what have you, you know, which, do I want to hear songs about abuse of children? Not particularly, although I can understand it'd be very meaningful to the artist. So I'm willing to sit there, particularly if it's a beautiful song. But if it's not a beautiful song, well, okay. You know, Pete's working through some issues here, and more power to him, I guess. But it doesn't for a great record. I don't think it does. But,
yeah, I've tried some. I've seen some documentaries, and I've listened to. I mean, I have almost all their records, and I don't get rid of them like Roxy Music. I sold everything. Like I had an entire. I really tried because I have two friends who are super into Roxy Music. They think that it's the best ever, and I really tried. So I kept the records for so long, and I sold it. And now my friend who passed, he had all the records. So I kept them now also that I got from him or the family. So I'm gonna clean them and give them a try again.
I would say that if you like the Who, you don't actually need this record, because all of the best parts of this record are available two other places and two other Who records that you should have. One is Meaty Bitty Big and Bouncy, right? That tremendous singles compilation, which has got Pinball Wizard, and the Kids Are All Right has preferable versions of Tommy Can You Hear Me and See Me Feel Me. Really great versions of those songs, better than on here. So here you just have inferior studio versions and a bunch of recitative, right? So,
what do you think of Quadrophenia? Is that do you think that that's a better record than Tommy?
Which one?
Quadrophilia, is that the
Quadrophenia? No, I don't. It's got even fewer sort of memorable moments on it. Yeah. Frankly, it's sort of, you know, I mean, credit to Pete Townshend for trying to expand the art form, but I mean, the reality is, the highest point of achievement for him in rock opera is actually a quick one while he's away. That little 8-minute song is fantastic. Tells a story, which this sort of tries to do, but doesn't really. It's not obvious when you listen to it, and also is great music. Right on top of that, the version they did on the Rolling Stones' Rock and Roll Circus that's one of the great moments in the history of rock and roll. That performance. Right. And so he should have just quit then. Right. But I think, well, this 8 minutes is good. A double LP, will it be even better? Well, no, Pete, it wasn't. So we now know this historically. People were wowed at the time, but.
We love to read the comments on this one, like both on your and my channel. It's going to be great.
There you go. Yeah, probably. Well, we put it out there. Okay. So now what we decided to do was to each pick a record, which was a favorite early memory from the collections of our parents, or an early memory of music when we were young. So over to you.
Yeah, I took this. I don't like collecting records. Like I have records from my childhood, but not many. Most of it I've sold through the years. Like this is my collection is a living thing. Like I don't hold on to everything. People, like I talk to people all the time and they say I could never sell anything on my records. I sell stuff all the time. But there are a few records that I got from my dad that I remember from my earliest childhood or memories, or maybe when I not earliest, but really when I started to notice that there were record covers, and there were artists, so I think that the record I'm going to show you is from 1988, 89, maybe something like that. So I'm 7, 8, or 9 years old, something like that. And the record is this, actually. So this is Roy Orbison and Friends.
Oh, wow.
And I remember my dad playing this a lot at home. This, and I think he also played Mystery Girl, because they came out about the same time, 1989, 90, something like that. 1989, yeah. And that is also a fantastic record, in my opinion. But this I have fond memories about. A Black and White Night Live. So you have Roy Orbison, obviously, but Bruce Springsteen, Tom Waits, and Elvis Costello playing on this. And that's that's a pretty wild bunch.
It is. What date was it recorded again? When was it recorded?
1989.
Okay.
So when my dad played this at home, this is just before he got his CD player, I think, at least. Must have been. Yeah, sure. So when he got his CD, he gave me all his records, like 2 crates maybe worth of records, and his record player. So I was like 10 years old, something like that, when I had my own record, my turntable in my room, and a crate of records. I remember like there were some Status Quo and Creedence, but also this one. And this one I've kept through all the years.
So was that released posthumously then? Because didn't he? When did he
died? No. Let's see here.
He died in the 80s, didn't he? Hang on.
But maybe 89, 90, because 88 Traveling Wilburys came out, I think.
He died in December 88. So December 88. So that must have been recorded and then released posthumously, I'm assuming.
Yeah. No in sleeve here that says anything. But it's produced by T-Bone Burnett. Great sounding one too. So this has to be one of the last things that he did. This and Mystery Girl.
Tell me about the music. Is it?
It's good. He does Only the Lonely, In Dreams, Dream Baby, a lot of dreams, Crying, which is a fantastic song. And obviously Oh Pretty Woman. So All I Can Do Is Dream of You. So his sort of the greatest hits, I guess, but with cool guest artists like Elvis and Tom.
Very cool.
Huh. So that's one, and I actually cheated because I took 2.
Good.
And I want to show this because to sort of go down my Swedish heritage. This is also a CD box set that my dad had.
Oh wow.
Stolen from him. So this is hope he's not watching. No, I'm just kidding. I got all his CDs. This is prog hits in Sweden.
Nice.
And I think that this, in one way, but especially this, sort of took me on a path of what I am looking for or what I'm listening to today. There are a lot of prog on here that is shit, like really super bad, but some of this are the best music that ever been produced in Sweden. Fantastic compilation, 3 CDs. I'm really glad that he had that.
Is it only Swedish prog?
What did you say?
Is it only Swedish prog, or who else is on that?
Yeah, only Swedish prog. So like Samla Mammas Manna, you have to be like into Swedish psych, I guess, to know some of these. But Bo Hansson, who did Lord of the Rings,
right?
You have Kebnekaise, Träggas och Stenar. So some of the sort of the pillars of instrumental Swedish progressive music, or maybe more like folk psych. But then you have the progressive movement, the political progressive movement here in Sweden, with Swedish lyrics and very sort of folk singer-songwriter, political, anyone can play sort of that sort of movement, and that's not my thing. But a lot of people love that music, but it's not.
Almost like the punk ethos, right? Anybody can play, just get a guitar and play, kind of thing. So but it's not punkish music though. It's like
no, it's like Bob Dylan, in a way. So right. It's like the lyrics of Bob Dylan when he is the most political in maybe the 60s,
right?
I should say. But it's funny thing that you mention it, because in early 70s there were a group that no one could play. They took up some instruments and they wrote a song, and that song was actually covered by Swedish absolute most known punk group later on. They had a smash hit with one of these sort of political prog songs, and the arrangement is totally different, but it's sort of the proof that music works over sort of what do I want to say, like over ages and like
it crosses generations.
Yeah, it crosses generations. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, that's fascinating. I know it's I mean, my kids have had to tolerate listening to all kinds of stuff. Well, although it is a point of pride to me that they can easily pick out Ozzy Osbourne's voice on almost anything now, because of their early training in classic Black Sabbath releases. But one isn't always successful in transmitting that. But it is remarkable, and why we're doing this bit here, that the things that imprint on you, when you're younger, that your parents like. It's also kind of fun. I've sometimes given music back to my parents, particularly my dad's a big music fan, that he would never have listened to. I remember I gave him Bob Marley's Legend, right? And he'd never heard a reggae song in his life, right? But he was probably 50. It was probably around 19 in the mid to late 80s. I gave that to him. He thought it was fantastic. It was nothing. Yeah. It was on the turntable for like the next 3 years in the house, right? So I was like, well, that was nailed that one apparently. Yeah. But this one actually is the other way around. So this record. So I grew up in a town in southern British Columbia, and we would occasionally. My grandparents lived in Vancouver, so we would obviously drive down to Vancouver Christmas and summer and holidays and so on, see my grandparents. And my mother had this record, and it was definitely one of her records, one of her faves. And either she or my dad had made a cassette, like a homemade cassette tape of it, and so. And in our car, we had like a Datsun 210 or 510 station wagon, which didn't have a cassette player. It had radio, right? AM radio. That was basically it. But they had a cassette player with batteries, which they, like a little single cassette player, like a little one, like you would use for recording a conversation, like interviewing somebody. Yeah. So, which is sitting on the floor by her feet, and then she would play. And this was one of the only cassettes that they had. And so I remember this, I always remember this music, particularly these long car trips. It was like a 4 or 5 hour trip, to get down to Vancouver. So it was, so I would remember this, and it is a Spanish record by a Spanish singer by the name of Maria Astiz, and it's if you had to classify it as a genre, it's basically folk, like a Spanish folk. She has the voice of an angel. It is just incredible music, and she has the most remarkable range that you can imagine. And Stiggs plays guitar. There's also some orchestration on this as well. She becomes more popular in the later 70s, but this to me is the absolute peak. This is like I don't think it says, but I'm assuming it probably says. This is a Canadian pressing, strangely enough, but this is a date on this. Vanguard. I don't know that there is. It's a Vanguard pressing, so which another reason why it's a folk record, because it's Vanguard. So I'm going to say this music is like 68 to 70, something like that, somewhere in there. But just magical music. And if you haven't heard Maria Astiz, I recommend.
Definitely go and check her out.
Yeah, you do that, and particularly if you in any way like, say, for instance, Joan Baez, you would love her music. Actually,
is it only sung in Spanish, or is it sung in?
Yeah, so like okay, so for instance, one of the classic songs here is, they're all in Spanish. Canción del Ruiseñor, the song of the Ruiseñor means some kind of bird. It's like sparrow or something like that in Spanish. They're either written by her or they're traditionals. There's one, she got an arranging credit on here, which is often what you get when they're traditional songs. Just a remarkable record and a beautiful voice, and highly memorable. And if you like folk music, this is one to pick up, I would say. So there you go. And always a happy memory for me, that one. So
yeah, awesome. I'm going to check it out.
There we go. Well, that brings us, I think, to the end of our whatever it is, 6th, 7th, I forget. So I'll have to look that up before I prepare the video. But this was great.
Been a while.
I had a great time.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's awesome to be back in some be back. But it's been a while since we did the last one now over the holidays and stuff like that. So
and I know a few folks certainly really enjoy these. So and we always try and do something slightly different. If you have suggestions,
yes,
if because we always have a couple where we sort of are kind of a it's a bit of a curveball kind of thing. So if you have a suggestion as to what we might look at the next time we do this, we're all ears, and we'd again always like the feedback. So thanks very much for watching.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
Bye.